Begin recording. Welcome everyone who's joining us online today. We're here at Trinity Pacific Church and so excited about what God has been doing, what he is doing, and what he will be doing. God is with us. And that's where we're focused on today. I'm going to ask Chris to lead us in the next song. And so open your hearts, sing along, and allow this to prepare your hearts to hear the Lord's word. Father in heaven, we thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ. We thank you that you are with us and that where two or three are gathered in Jesus' name, there he is among us as well. And so we ask that you would allow us to hear your voice, allow us to hear your truth as we open our hearts to receive what you have for us through the power of the Holy Spirit, who inspired your word, and your word is active and alive. We ask that it pierce our soul, that we would be challenged, that we would be renewed and encouraged to follow Jesus and Jesus alone. In his name we pray. Amen. In our sermon series on Isaiah the prophet, we've learned that Isaiah was likely of royal lineage. Isaiah began his career as biographer of King Uzziah, who had a very long reign, and so that was a very long assignment. In the year that this king, King Uzziah, died, the Lord revealed himself to Isaiah in a vision and called him to be a prophet. He changed not just Isaiah, but also his job. We're not sure which prophecies Isaiah received during the reign of Uzziah's son, the next king, King Jotham. But what we do know is that the first historic placement of a prophecy that we have from Isaiah is during the reign of King Jotham's son, King Ahaz. Last Sunday, we took a closer look at the context for this prophecy and the sign of the virgin bearing a son that most of us are familiar with from Christmas readings. And this son whose name was to be Emmanuel. And today we're going to continue in Isaiah chapter 8. But we need to realize that Isaiah chapter 8 is really only an extension and still part of Isaiah chapter 7 that keeps going on. Actually, it's Isaiah 7 to 12. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 6 chapters that are one book, and Bible scholars refer to this as the book of Emmanuel, because the word Emmanuel, the term Emmanuel, the name Emmanuel appears 3 times in this book, and only in this book in the prophet Isaiah. The historical context for these 6 chapters is given right at the beginning, and I'll refer back to Isaiah 7 verse 1, which is at the top of that book of Emmanuel. In the days of Ahaz, the son of Jotham, son of Uzziah, king of Judah. So in the days of Ahaz, Rezin, the king of Syria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, the king of Israel, came up to Jerusalem to wage war against it, but could not yet mount an attack against it. So that's the context, that's the historical, political, and military context for these 6 chapters. And then we read in Isaiah 7 verse 3, and the Lord said to Isaiah, go out to meet Ahaz, you and Shear-Yashub, your son, at the end of the conduit of the upper pool on the highway to the washer's field, and say to him. So in this situation, which is doom and gloom, the Lord speaks to Isaiah the prophet and says, that's where I want you to go, and this is what I want you to say. What follows is a prophecy that will be fulfilled within 65 years. And God himself says this will happen within 65 years. He knows how long 65 years is, and he has no problem in giving that number. And then we read, again, the Lord spoke to Ahaz. Okay, so we've got the first speaking of the Lord, sending Isaiah to meet King Ahaz at a specific place next to the wall in Jerusalem. And then again, the Lord speaks, and he says, ask a sign of the Lord your God, let it be deep as Sheol or high as heaven. And as we remember from last time, King Ahaz misinterprets the word of God in Deuteronomy. And then what follows is the sign that the Lord himself gives. Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and call his name Emmanuel. He shall eat curds and honey when he knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good. For before the boy knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good, the land whose 2 kings you dread will be deserted. And there's so much in here. I'm just going to touch on one little thing that we here in the West might not pick up on. But do you remember what the promised land is called even before the people of Israel go there? It's called the land flowing with milk and honey. Good. So here we go, curds and honey, milk and honey. Yep, we're right there, promised land. Then the Lord gives more details about the prophecy and what follows that passage in verses 17 to 25 is the next thing that the Lord tells Isaiah to do. So we've got this meeting of Isaiah the prophet with King Ahaz. And now here's what the Lord says. Then the Lord said to me, take a large tablet and write on it in common characters belonging to Maher-shalal Hashbaz. Okay. We got to remember that Isaiah was a scribe by trade, right? He knew where to get a large tablet from, and he knew how to write on it and so on and so forth. And of course, he also knew the meaning of these Hebrew words that for us is a little foreign. Speedy spoil, quick booty. Right? That would be an approximate English translation. Different Bibles translate that in different ways. But that's what he's supposed to write on this tablet. And it's supposed to be a large tablet. And what we read here as translated in common characters should actually be translated literally as write on it with a man's stylus or a man's graving tool. Since the intention is that everyone can read it, translators have rendered it as in common characters with an ordinary pen or with a man's pen, but the idea really is we have something to say. We've got a message from the Lord, and we want everybody to be able to read it. This kind of connects with Isaiah 30, verse 8, which is a lot later in the book, where the Lord again tells Isaiah, now go, write it before them on a tablet and inscribe it in a book, that it may be for the time to come as a witness forever. And here the same word for tablet is used. And this time Isaiah is also told to write it into a book. And that book will be understood as a scroll in that day. We don't have books until the time of Jesus, where Romans began to put leaves together. At this time, it was a scroll that would have been understood. And again, these are things that Isaiah was trained to do as biographer of King Uzziah. And now God is saying, I want you to write these prophecies in a book, which is pretty cool because we still have that book. Whereas Isaiah 8 verse 1 is about what the Lord tells Isaiah to do. So the Lord tells Isaiah to get this large tablet, write these words on that tablet, and so on and so forth. Isaiah chapter 8 verse 2, which is the next verse, tells us about what the Lord is going to do. And here's what we read. And I, the Lord, will get reliable witnesses, Uriah the priest and Zechariah the son of Jeberechiah, to attest for me. Let me introduce those two characters to you. In 2 Kings 16, we read that Uriah the priest did everything that Ahaz the king told him to do, even though he knew it was wrong. And it seems that Uriah the priest was a reliable and powerful person, possibly the high priest at the time. So we know about Uriah the priest. He actually lived during that time. Zechariah, the son of Jeberechiah, was most likely King Ahaz's father-in-law. We read that in 2 Kings 18 and 2 Chronicles 29. And so this Zechariah, and there's many Zechariahs in scripture, so really be careful. We've got the prophet Zechariah, and he lives a long later, right? There's quite some time after that, which we have prophet, and we've got a number of Zechariahs. And so Zechariah is a name that is still used today, Zach, and so on and so forth. It's just a short form Zechariah, and it means man of God, or man of the Lord. Yah is Yahweh, the Lord, and Zachary is man, right? So common name. But this Zechariah, as King Ahaz's father-in-law, is another person of rank and possibly of nobility. And it would seem then that these reliable witnesses combine the top representatives of the temple and of the court. So the priestly and the royalty or the ruling class. And the very next thing we read after these witnesses is in Isaiah 8 verse 3, where it says, and I, Isaiah, went to the prophetess, and she conceived and bore a son. Really interesting. Let me take a brief look at this word prophetess, because it doesn't come that often. Right? We've got lots of prophets, but how often do we have prophetesses? There's 5 of them in the Old Testament. 5. Just in case you didn't know, let me give them to you. The first one is Miriam in Exodus 15. The next one is Deborah in Judges 4. The next one is Huldah in 2 Kings 22. Then we have Noadiah. Noadiah. Okay. In Nehemiah 6. And Isaiah's wife, who is a prophetess, in Isaiah chapter 8. Now, we're just going to take a brief look at these 5, or actually the 4 above Isaiah's wife, to understand what prophetess means for Isaiah's wife. The second one, Deborah, was married to Lapidoth, and the third one, Huldah, was married to Shallum. We're not sure if Miriam or Noadiah were married, but in the cases of Deborah and Huldah, it seems clear that their husbands were not prophets. Okay? That sounds like a random piece of information, but it's not a random piece of information, because the fact that they were referred to as prophetess didn't mean that their title stemmed from the fact that their husband was a prophet, and I'm just Mrs. Prophetess. Okay? No, their husband is not a prophet, and she is the prophetess. And so in the case of this prophetess, whom we'll see that Isaiah marries, she's not prophetess because Isaiah is the prophet. She actually is a prophetess. For me and some other Bible scholars, the question still remains, was she Isaiah's only wife, or perhaps his second wife? And here's where reading the sign that follows is helpful. After the prophetess conceived and bore a son, and by the way, those are exactly the same words that we have in Isaiah 7:14, the previous chapter. Then the Lord said to me, and this is Isaiah chapter 8, 3 and 4, call his name Maher-Shalal-Hashbaz. Oh, we had that on the large billboard before. And now that name is to be the name of the boy. Before the boy knows how to cry, my father or my mother, the wealth of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria will be carried away before the king of Assyria. So here we have that connection: speedy spoil, quick booty, right? So the boy gets the name that we have on the billboard because before he's able to say daddy and mommy, this is going to happen. All that spoil and booty is going to be taken away from Damascus and Samaria. Now, doesn't that sound very similar to, and I quote, before the boy knows how to choose evil and refuse the evil and choose the good, the land whose 2 kings you dread will be deserted. And as we know, the 2 kings you dread are Rezin, the king of Syria and Damascus, and Pekah, the king of Israel and Samaria. We read that in Isaiah 7 verse 1. And here it seems that the sign that was given to Ahaz in Isaiah 7 verse 1 is repeated after the boy is born. The same sign. But then somebody might say, well, just hang on, Frank. In Isaiah 7, it's a virgin who will conceive. So what's up with the prophetess? Is she a virgin? And I think this is where the two witnesses come in. These are the two witnesses of the marriage between Isaiah and the prophetess. Because the next verse tells us that Isaiah consummated this marriage with the prophetess. And so it seems logical that the prophetess was a virgin at the time of the first sign given in Isaiah chapter 7. And now marries Isaiah the prophet and has her firstborn child, who is a son. And then we're saying, oh, just a minute, this isn't quite lining up, because in Isaiah 7, Isaiah is told to take his son Shear-Yashub to meet King Isaiah. So Isaiah already has a son. Well, that doesn't seem to be a problem if we agree with scholars that suggest, as they do in the NIV Study Bible, that Isaiah's first wife probably died after Shear-Yashub was born. And so the Alma, the virgin, that is referred to in Genesis 24:43, for instance, is a young woman about to be married, and the virgin in Isaiah 7:14 is about to be married, and that would be the prophetess in Isaiah 8:3. I know this all sounds rather confusing, but let me take you one step further. Why then wasn't the boy named Emmanuel? Because that's what God said. The virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and his name shall be called Emmanuel. Well, if we look very carefully, and she shall call his name Emmanuel. Whoa. There's another story that is a little bit similar, and I feel that the Bible explains the Bible better than we can explain the Bible. And so we're going to go to 2 Samuel chapter 12, verses 24 and 25, where we read, "Then David comforted his wife Bathsheba and went into her and lay with her, and she bore a son, and he called his name Solomon." Who called his name Solomon? David called his name Solomon. And the Lord loved him and sent a message by Nathan the prophet. The Lord loved him, sent a message by Nathan the prophet, so he called his name Jedediah because of the Lord. Okay, for us, that doesn't make too much sense because we're not native Hebrew speakers. Jedediah means loved by the Lord. And the Lord loved him. His name is Jedediah. Okay, it's one of those typical naming things that we have. And so God gave the name Jedediah. David gave the name Solomon, and we never hear of Jedediah in the rest of Scripture. Okay, so it's okay for God to say this boy's name will be Emmanuel, and then he gets the name Swift, Booty, Spoil, Quake, and all the rest, right? I think that lines up very well. And the first time we read of Emmanuel is in Isaiah 7:14, as we know. And the second time he talks about Isaiah is in Isaiah 8, verses 5-8. And this is a longer passage. And again, it's very interesting since the word this passage begins with is because. The Lord spoke to me again, because this people has refused the waters of Shiloh that flow gently and rejoice over Rezin and the son of Remaliah. Therefore, Behold, the Lord is bringing up against them the waters of the river, which is the river Euphrates, mighty and many, the king of Assyria and all his glory, and it will rise over all its channels and go over all its banks, and it will sweep onto Judah. It will overflow and pass on, reaching even to the neck, and its outspread wings will fill the breadth of your land. O Emmanuel. Now, this image of flood is something that we've had recently in BC, as you'll remember, right? Once those embankments are no longer able to hold the water and there's just one little breach, everything 99% can be totally okay, and there's just one breach. That's all it takes. We've got that flood and the waters start rising. It doesn't matter who's in that water, animals or people, not good. And this is the image that God gives about the prophecy. This isn't the sign, this is the prophecy that will happen within 65 years, and that these waters from Assyria will not just sweep over Damascus and Samaria, they'll also sweep over Judah. Filling the breadth of your land, O Emmanuel. O God with us. And the reason for that is that the people are happy that the sign will be fulfilled, that the wealth of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria will be carried away, but they're not willing to repent. As a matter of fact, if we read carefully the stories in 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles, it's scary to the point of being almost revolting where the people come to in their idolatry. And so the prophecy of judgment of Judah will need to be fulfilled, which could have been stopped and avoided if the people would have repented along with their king. And so the northern kingdom will be completely wiped out. It will be no more. And it will also wash over Judah. And Assyria will cover Emmanuel's land. Now, if Emmanuel is the second son of Isaiah, that would mean Emmanuel is a Jewish boy whose country will be overrun by the Assyrians. And we can understand that, right? Your country, my little boy, my baby boy, who's not able to say mommy and daddy yet, is going to be overrun by the Assyrians. But if the promised land is the land of Emmanuel, it seems that Emmanuel is a much greater person. The one we know to be the Son of God, Jesus, the Messiah. And the other mention of Emmanuel, this is the third mention of Emmanuel in the book of Isaiah, is in Isaiah 8, verse 10, which reads, "Take counsel together, but it will not come to nothing. Speak a word, but it will not stand, for God is with us," for Emmanuel. And this time, all the nations are referred that want to wage battle against Israel. But this time, the other times it wasn't the case, but this time in this prophecy, God is with us, and it will come to nothing. And this is the verse that Paul quotes in Romans 8, verse 31. If God is with us, who can be against us? Also translated as, if God is for us, who can be against us? But if God is with us is the Hebrew original, Emmanuel, who can be against us? And clearly, this prophecy, this Emmanuel cannot be Isaiah's second son. This is the God with us, whom God has given all authority in heaven and on earth. And that's why no one can stand against us. Isaiah's little boy grew up and died, but there's an Emmanuel who grew up and is still alive. And his name is Jesus. That's the Emmanuel mentioned in Matthew chapter 1, verse 23. Again, the Bible tells us his name is Emmanuel, but does anybody ever call Jesus Emmanuel during his life on earth? No. As a matter of fact, he won't even call himself Emmanuel. He'll call himself the Son of Man. And so here again, we have names that are given but not used. That doesn't mean they're not there. It just means they're not used. I know some of you have friends that you call by a name, but really their true birth name is something else, or they use their second name, but when they go banking, they have to reveal their first name and all that kind of stuff, right? So we shouldn't be surprised. We think, oh, what kind of strange thing is, it still happens today, right? That's the way things are. And then we have the great thing, especially in the New Testament, it already happens in the Old as well, but in the New Testament, where people get new names, right? That's not in the birth certificate, right? Peter, his name is Simon in his birth certificate, not Peter, right? And so on and so forth. So this whole name thing has to do with identity. And in this case, it's not just the identity of a newborn baby, it is a prophecy for another baby whose identity will truly be God with us, because he is not just born of a virgin, but also of the Holy Spirit. Now, this is all fascinating and interesting and sometimes confusing stuff, and I recognize that I'm kind of coming on a little bit like a fire hose, but I also want to move to Isaiah himself. In our sermon series, we're not talking so much about all the prophecies. That would be a very long sermon series to cover 66 chapters. We're specifically talking about the prophet Isaiah and how he interacts in different situations, what the Lord tells him to do and so forth. And the interesting thing is that, as we have just heard, Isaiah hears from the Lord and he obeys the Lord. He hears what he's supposed to do. Grab your son, share your shub, and go there. So he grabs his son. Okay, boy, we've got a job to do, right? And he does that, and he speaks the word of the Lord, and so on and so forth. But for Isaiah, this is not just blind obedience. He responds to the Lord, and he responds in this way. I'm reading from Isaiah chapter 8, verses 16 to 17. Bind up the testimony. Seal the law among my disciples. I will wait for the Lord, who is hiding his face from the house of Jacob, and I will hope in him. These are not words that God speaks in prophecy. These are words of the prophet Isaiah, who's talking to his disciples. Let me unpack that a little bit for us. The testimony that Isaiah received and wrote down was to be saved together with the law that Moses had received and written down. Isaiah was a scribe and knew that if things weren't written down and preserved, they would eventually get lost. Right? This was his experience. He knew that his job was important. His job of writing the biography of a king was important, because if we don't write it down, it's going to get lost. And now his job of writing down these prophecies is important, because if we don't, they're going to get lost, and we don't need to just write them down. We need to make sure they are preserved. And so he recognized that the revelation he had been given by the Lord was no less important than the law that was given to Moses. This is pretty big. In hindsight, we recognize, whoa, Isaiah was a big prophet, this, that, and the other thing. But really, I think that is a big understanding to say that what I'm writing down is just as important as what Moses wrote down. Whoa, that is huge. That is huge. Secondly, not only did Isaiah recognize the importance of writing things down and preserving them, he obviously also had a number of disciples that he could count on. In other words, Isaiah wasn't a one-man show against an evil king and a people that worship foreign gods. We do have a few prophets that are kind of one-man shows, and that's okay. But Isaiah was obviously someone where others gravitated to and wanted to learn from the prophet. They loved the Lord and recognized Isaiah as a prophet of the Lord. We need to dig in. We need to find out more. He's receiving words for us now in this situation. He knows the law. And together, that is a powerful package. We need that. And as we know, Jesus took discipleship to the next level. Beginning with come and see, Jesus later called the disciples to follow me. It begins with come and see, and then he says, follow me. And first sending out the 12, he then sends out the 72 others, and then tells all of his disciples, including us, who follow Jesus, go therefore and make disciples. It doesn't stop there. Jesus' disciple making continues till today and will continue until his return. Make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them. Okay, this is what Isaiah is doing with his prophets, and this is what Jesus did with his disciples, Isaiah with his disciples, I'm sorry. And some of them may have turned prophets as well. That's a good thing. I'm suspecting that Micah may be one of them. But anyways, really fascinating to see that connection between the Old and New Testament. And the third thing is that Isaiah said he will wait for the Lord who is hiding his face from the house of Jacob and put his trust in him. At this moment in time, Isaiah recognizes that the Lord has spoken, but he's not very happy with what the people are doing. And so he's hiding his face from his people. And that's never a good thing. That's judgment. And judgment will come. And it's not going to be nice. And Isaiah says, I know that this is what's happening, and still I will wait for the Lord. Judgment is not going to be the final word. Salvation is going to be the final word. And it may take a while. It may take 65 years. It may take longer than 65 years. I will wait. And for some of us, this word wait is a bad word. We want it now. I deserve to have it now. Right? That's what culture tells us. You can have it now. Just fork it over and you can have it now. No. The word wait in Scripture is a good word. It's a good word. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up on wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not be faint. Isaiah chapter 40, right? Isaiah, the same guy. So he knows what he's talking about. He says, I will wait in chapter 8, Isaiah chapter 40. And those that wait, I want you all to wait, right? Waiting is a good thing. And this is what happens when you wait. Wow. Shall we embrace wait as a good word? We want this pandemic to go away, like tomorrow or even today, if it were possible, right? And Isaiah's in this terrible time and says, that's okay, I'll wait. I'm not waiting for things to go away. I'm waiting for the Lord. I'm waiting for the Lord. That's something different. Because waiting for the Lord doesn't matter what the outside circumstances are, it's in here. And so we can recognize that the Lord is hiding his face, and maybe that's a little bit of what's happening now too, because it's a worldwide thing. It's not just, a local, thing that's going to blow away. No, this is serious. And then he goes on to say, and I will put my trust in him. The times Isaiah was living in were very difficult. Enemy attacks from the outside, idolatry on the inside. The words we keep hearing since 2 years is we live in unprecedented times. Friends, I don't think so. If we read scripture, there's been bad times and there's been worse times. We're not afraid of our lives. We're not being persecuted. We don't have blood rolling down the streets. We have it pretty good, actually. And still the prophet Isaiah waits for the Lord and puts his trust in God. That reminds me of Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8. Why does he wait for the Lord? Because he knows only from the Lord comes salvation. And salvation is grace. It's not something we deserve. Salvation is grace. And so the Apostle Paul tells us, for you have been saved by grace through faith. And faith is trusting in God, putting our trust in Jesus. Isaiah trusted that someday Emmanuel would come to save Israel. Right? He received this prophecy and he trusted, I'm going to wait. It never happened during his lifetime. It didn't even happen during the lifetime of his son. It happened hundreds of years later, but he said, I will wait because it will happen. And it did happen. We know that Jesus was Emmanuel, who came to save his people from their sins. That's the meaning of Jesus as given by the angel in Matthew 1, verse 21. And so this Emmanuel, God with us, is not just a warm, fuzzy feeling. It's just, okay, God is here, nothing can happen, we're going to be okay. No. God is here and he longs for a personal relationship with each one of us. God sent his son, Jesus Christ, so that all who believe in him should not perish, but have eternal life. This is the key to Emmanuel. The key to Emmanuel is not the end of war or victory in battle. The key to Emmanuel is Jesus Christ. And he says in Revelation 3, behold, I stand at the door and knock. Anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him. And this knocking is not at the door of our church, it's not at the door of our house, it's at the door of our hearts. And friends, this is the real meaning of Emmanuel. Jesus promises if we open the door of our hearts and invite him in, if we say, come, Lord Jesus, please move in, then we have God with us. Then we can say with 1 John 4, verse 4, greater is the one who is in me than the one who is in the world. In me, not around me, not by me, not with me, but in me. Friends, how powerful to see Isaiah clinging to something that the Lord has revealed to him that bit by bit is just in small steps being revealed, in small steps actually happening, knowing that there is something bigger happening, and it will happen, and there's no doubt in my mind that it will happen. And this is so true, and we are the ones that are blessed as we receive that message and respond to that message in the same way that Isaiah did. The first thing he did was to say, the words that God speaks are life-giving words. We need to remember and preserve them. The words of the Bible are nourishment for the soul. Don't let them gather dust. Don't put them away. Read them. Put them in your heart. And then get together with others. Isaiah didn't want to be a loner. He had disciples. Jesus had disciples. Jesus could have done this all by himself, right? He was the Son of God, but he didn't want to. That wasn't the assignment, right? He gathered disciples, and we need to do the same thing here at Trinity Pacific Church. And then trust and wait. Wait. Waiting is a good thing. And trusting is going to give us the strength to wait. He'll give us the power to wait. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you so much that you have good news for us. That even in the worst of times, when the enemies, not just one, but two and more, are on their way, are attacking us and will run over us, even there, we can wait for your salvation and trust in you and know that you are with us. We thank you so much for Jesus Christ, who is Emmanuel. And we thank you that your word shows us how we can open the door of our hearts and say, Jesus, I need you. Jesus, I want you. Please move in. I want to surrender my life to you and allow you to give me new life, eternal life, life with meaning, with purpose, so that I will follow you for the rest of my life and truly be able to go where you want me to go, do what you want me to do, and say what you want me to say in order to receive your blessing and to be a blessing as you would want me to. Thank you, Father, for these words of truth. Help us to dig deeper into your word, to allow those living waters to wash over our soul and to strengthen us for the journey. In Jesus' precious name we pray. Amen.